Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I know this one looks a little weirder because I think this may be only the second time in the entire case of Foresight TV where I have done a solo episode. But today I want to talk a little bit about the sale of Senior Living Foresight to Procare HR, and I also want to talk a little bit about Nick and what I saw, what I liked, what I am challenged by. And so I'm actually going to start with a Nick update, and then I'll get into the Foresight sale, what it means to me, what it means to the Foresight team, what it means to the industry, and what it means to Procare HR. So starting with Nick. Most enthusiastic Nick I've probably ever been to. Everybody is so excited. The overhang of COVID is pretty much behind people. We know that it had an impact, probably have some lingering impact as how we think about things and do things for, I don't know, maybe the next 20 or 30 years, maybe until the entire generation that dealt with it is passed away and or gone out of the business. But largely the impacts are gone. Occupancy is high as ever. Staffing is still a challenge for sure. But occupancy is high, returns margins are high, which is really important at the NIC conference because it is primarily a money conference. One of the things that got talked about a lot is that traditionally senior living has been seen as an alternative investment for investment firms, for private equity, for REITs, for those kinds of organizations. And what that meant is the criteria to invest was much higher. Many organizations could not invest in it. Today, senior living is seen as one of a number of asset classes in real estate, which means that just about any kind of institutional investor can invest in senior living. And it is very attractive because right now, of all the classes of real estate people are investing in, organizations and entities are investing in, it's producing a higher rate of return than any other asset. You might be thinking that's really good, and it is good because it will attract capital and it means it'll be possible to build more senior living communities. But there are risks that go with that. The biggest single risk is that when you are an entrepreneur, you're starting a business, you have this idea, if you were just going to go out and build, I don't know, an ice cream shop. You'd have an idea to make this ice cream shop successful. You'd pick the right location. You'd think about the kind of ice cream, how you're going to sell it, how you're going to price it. And ultimately, what you would say is, how do I price my ice cream where I can make a fair return, maybe even a good return on my ice cream and give value to my customers? But let's suppose that something happened and that you became the only ice cream store in your town. And all the other ice cream stores closed up. They couldn't open out. You had the exclusive ice cream store. And you looked around, and what you found was that you had a long, long line of people lining up to buy your ice cream. So many people, you were exhausted at the end of the day. You had to have freezer trucks in back to hold your ice cream. And you were making so much money because you were selling so much ice cream. Now, as an individual, you would be really happy because you'd be creating great value. You'd look out your window and you'd see all these people licking ice cream cones and being happy with the ice cream cone. And you know you serve them and you know you get to go home making a really, really good living. If you were a private equity or a REIT and you owned that ice cream company, you actually wouldn't be that interested in the fact that people were loving your ice cream and that you were giving them value, because your only goal is to make as much money for the people who put money in your entity as possible. And so what you do is you look at that and say, man, I'm selling these ice cream cones for $6. I wonder if I could get 7. No, maybe I could get 8. No, maybe I could get 10. And then you might go, well, you know, if I can sell all this ice cream and people are lining up and in fact going away because they don't want to stand in the line and it's so popular, maybe I'd actually go out and get a lower quality of ice cream because I could make more profits. Because your number one goal is to maximize the profit rather than to serve your customers or to make a good living. And so the struggle here is that when you have institutional equity And it's what they're supposed to do. REITs, number one job, people invest in REITs because they want a high rate of return. And if you have two REITs, mostly this is true for individuals and for other institutions who are putting money in. You have one REIT that's making, has a 20% margin, the other one that has a 22% margin. They're going to take the 22% every time, even if the practices of the REIT doing the 22% are not as ethical, not as fair as the one is 20, because their job is to get as much. I mean, you got to retire off that. You want to make as much money as possible. This is the risk. As the buildings get full, there's less and less incentive for the institutional capital in particular to do a good job. There's less and less incentive potentially for everybody. Now, don't get me wrong about this. There are some amazing leaders out there who are doing some great things. I had a number of conversations, just as a for instance, I had conversations with 2 or 3 leaders who told me that their buildings are full, that they're fully staffed, that they get lots of great job applications every single month to fill the natural turnover that takes place, even in a really good organization, in a really good building. And so now I'm going to just touch on this for a second. I've written about it. I'll write about it more. There's a lot of still talk. I heard a number of people talk about the staffing crisis that occurs in senior living. And for many organizations, I will acknowledge that staffing crisis is true. But I would argue that the reason the staffing crisis exists is because they haven't spent enough time working on looking at and improving their workplace culture. When you have a great workplace culture and you're paying a fair wage, doesn't have to be the highest wage, fair wage for the work, it will not be your senior living community that is struggling to find staff. It'll be Starbucks and Taco Bell and McDonald's and Carl's Jr. that is struggling, because senior living has this unique ability to go out and create jobs where when people come to work, they can make the world a better place. They can transform lives. They can make things lives better. They get to go home and tell their kids and their grandkids and say, I went to work today and I had this impact on somebody. I held somebody's hand as they passed away and took their last breath. I sat and listened to this story. I cleaned up this person and they were embarrassed because they had these bodily functions that didn't go well. And I was able to make them smile and say, in spite of their embarrassment. You can't do that at Starbucks. You can't do that at Taco Bell. You can't do that at McDonald's. And so we have so much, we're such a good industry. We have so many things to do. Last thing that I found was particularly interesting. Couple other things that were interesting. A lot of discussion about how the baby boomers are going to want different things in senior living. I think we have a long way to go in that area, but I think that we're talking about it and thinking about it, and it will get better. I think it's an exciting time. I also think that one of the things that I wish were talked about in the industry, and this is none of these are specific to Nick. I want to start by saying that it was an amazing conference. They did an amazing job. But one of the things that was really unique with that I'm not seeing people talk about is we've had a lot of bad press this year, probably more than any year than I can remember. We are just sort of pretending like that's not happening. We need to be telling better stories, talking about that. We need to be putting pressure on the people who are not doing such a good job. Maybe we put a pressure on them to put them out of business. Maybe if you're selling senior living and somebody's talking to a low-cost option, it's crummy, you ought to be willing to say, you don't want to go look at that place. They will not love your mom. They will not love your dad the way we do. And then we need to be telling stories about how we are changing lives. The last thing I found really interesting is there was very little conversation about AI. Last few conferences I've been to, huge numbers of AI tracks, lots of talk, lots of exploration, talking about how they're doing it. We're actually going to dig deeper into this topic on Tech Tuesday. Jada, who's producing this show, is going to join me on that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about AI and senior living and why it seems like the conversation, the level of conversation has gone way down. So I'm going to leave it at that. Let's talk about a little bit about the sale of Foresight to a Procare HR. I have been doing this for 14 years. It started out as a dream. I was working in Silicon Valley, decided I wanted to come to senior living, a place where I'd started out when I was very young, a place that I loved working. And as I was making this transition, I ran across a guy who had a blog site with a similar business model in the technology space. I looked at what he did. I did a little bit of selling for him. I did a little bit of writing for him. And I learned along the way that I could write. And I thought, I'm going to go out and start it. And so something called Senior Living Foresight. Well, actually called the Senior Housing Forum at the time. And so I went out and I bought a domain name. I bought a hosting plan at like $4 a month because it had very low capacity. And I downloaded a free WordPress template for blogs. And I became my own webmaster, and I wrote my first article. And the first article got read by, 20 or 30 people, friends and families. And it kind of just barely creeped up. And then one day I was making some sales calls in Southern California, and I wrote an article about eating the frog first thing in the morning. And I got several hundred views on it. And I was absolutely thrilled. After about 12 months, I went and to a leading age, and I decided to see if I could find a few sponsors. I walked up to 4 random vendor booths, talked to them about what I was doing, told them I was looking for sponsors, and all 4 became sponsors. The only time in history I've ever had 100% close rate like that. Probably never happened again. One of those sponsors was Sage Age Strategies. They continue to be a sponsor and supporter today, and I'm just so grateful for their continued support. As we grew, 8 months later, I had a whole bunch more companies say they wanted to be a part of it, and pretty soon I was working two full-time jobs. And so we grew and we grew, and we added staff, and we added channels, we added live streams, and we added the podcast. And we did some online conferences, and we've done so many things. But the truth of the matter is that after 14 years, we've done about as much as we can do as one individual leading this. The second thing is that I'm getting older. I turned 70. I've still got capacity for a number of more years, but I need to start thinking about legacy and what that means and how I can continue and how Foresight can continue even after that day when I either choose not to do it or I cannot do it anymore. And so started thinking about it and had some conversation with Brett Landrum, who's the CEO of Procare. We started this conversation about 1.5 years ago. He asked me if I'd be interested in selling. Wasn't really that interested, but it got me to thinking. And then about 6 months ago, I decided it was time. And so we're going to have a new, different business model. We will have some sponsors, but that relationship will be very different. It will allow us to be able to put out just the content that we want to put out without being constrained by the requirements of sponsors. The sponsors are great, but we've had some sponsors that are better than others and some that are easier to work with than others. And that's not to tear anybody down. Without having to do the revenue model that we're doing, we can actually think better. We can have more diverse voices. A big part of what we're focusing on is bringing in more voices. And so one of my asks for you, and I'll talk about this again before we close out, is if you have some ideas, maybe it's you who think I ought to be on that show. I ought to be talking. I've got things that need to be said about the industry to make it better. I want to hear from you. Shoot me a direct message through LinkedIn or send me an email. I'm one of the easiest people in the world to find to connect with. Say, hey, let's talk. I got some ideas about what we need to talk about. We want to do deeper dives into issues. And so one of the things we want to know is what kind of content would make it better for you? What would make you a better leader if you're an executive director, if you're a regional, if you're in the C-suite? Are there things we shouldn't be talking about? Do you need us to be doing more trainings? Do you need us to be talking about more lofty leadership ideas. Do we need to be spending more time on life enrichment? Do we need to be spending more time on finance? We want to hear from you about what those things are that would help you serve your residents, serve your team members, and serve your families better. We've got some ideas. I'm going to be reaching out to a bunch of leaders about what we should be doing. And I would love to be able to hear from you about what would make things better. Elizabeth, I'm based out of Northern California, and we are a virtual company. Procare, the buyer, is based out of Minnesota. So I want to talk a little bit about why Procare was the perfect match. I first met Brett, their founder and CEO, maybe 3 or 4 years ago at a conference, and we got to talking, and we had very, very similar values. We were committed to making the industry better, to finding unmet needs, filling that gap, and helping the industry be better. And it's a little bit like the ice cream shop, making a reasonable rate of return. And so as we talked, the one thing that became clear as he started talking about purchasing and having a deeper relationship with Foresight, Elizabeth, reach out to me by direct message through LinkedIn. I would love to have a conversation with you. We have a lot of people we talk about in a lot of viewers and readers in Canada. So I'm curious to have more conversation. See, just like that. So anyway, as we talked, the question was, how do we have better conversation, provide more content that will help people lead better? And leading better is ultimately about changing people's lives, giving people better lives, team members, residents, and family members. And a big part of this was that Brett understood that sometimes talking about the most important things is really hard, that they made things uncomfortable. And I know from feedback that not everybody is thrilled with what we do. We do have our critics. Sometimes people think we should not talk about these hard things. I think next week for this show, we are going to have the producer of the film series that's showing on Amazon and Tubi called No Country for Old People. And it is a very hypercritical look at the nursing home. And I'm going to spend more time digging into the series this week. I've watched part of it, and it's brutal, and some of it's not fair. And we're going to challenge the things that were not fair, but there are also there's a lot of truth there, and we ought to pay attention to that truth and say, how do we get better? What's our responsibility? And so we're not afraid to tackle those topics. And a lot of companies acquiring a company like Foresight would say, oh, no, you can't do those kinds of things. Brett's saying, go out and talk about those because these are the things that make things better. And so we're going to continue to talk about the uncomfortable stuff. And so Procare met all my non-negotiables. We had a shared mission. We had a great cultural fit. We wanted to grow. They were willing to put more resources into it so that we could grow and have a bigger impact on the industry. So that's the story. We are going to make a change in the industry. We've had an impact. We hear it from leaders all the time. They're taking articles and videos like this that we do and sharing them with their team members and talking about how they can grow their organizations. We just want to do more of that, more resources. And I'll be frank, but the other part of that is there's some things I'm not very good at. I like leading my team, but I don't like doing things like payroll. There are lots of things about running the thing that I hate doing. And they've got a big infrastructure to be able to do that. That means that I can go out and do the stuff I'm best at, which is making a difference in the industry. And they've got people and resources that will take care of that stuff. So one of the things that we talked a lot about, and I've already touched on, but I want to finish. I want to go a little deeper on is whether or not they will muck around with our editorial freedom. And frankly, it's been a question that Rock, thank you very much. Let's pop that up. Rock, thank you so much. Love to hear more about what you're doing. But one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about was our cultural fit and editorial freedom. And over again, his question was, you don't have to change a thing. I'm not going to muck in. I'm never going to come back and second guess your content. I'm never going to come in and say, I want to review your content before you put it up. This conversation, originally he was going to join me. He couldn't make that happen. He didn't come back and say, well, say this, don't say this. Hey, say anything you want. And that is how it's going to continue. So we are going to be able to tackle the things that are important to you. We're not going to have to focus on the things that pay the bills. We're going to talk about the hard stuff. We're also going to talk about the fun stuff. We want to have fun. We want to help you have fun. I sat in on their monthly town hall meeting yesterday, and it was so much fun. One of the things they did that really thrilled me was part of their routine was to tell dad jokes, and they were terrible and they were punny and they were great fun. And so we need to continue to do fun. So we're going to tackle the stuff that's for you. My passion is greater than ever, making the industry better. We want to hear from you about what would make this work for you. What the sale really means is more resources, more freedom to serve you as leaders to make the industry better. I love you. Oh, one more thing I want to talk about. My whole entire team is coming with us. We're not laying anybody off. And so it's a little bit I know they're a little bit nervous about it, but it's going to be good for them and new and greater things. And again, we'd love to hear from you about what will help you lead better into the future to make to really see this industry come into its own. My dream is that as people get older, they start saying, I've loved my independent life in my independent house, but now that I'm old, I want to go live in community with a bunch of other older people, and I still want to have impact. I want to make new friends. I want to make a difference. That's our opportunity. That's my dream for the senior living industry, and we just want to play a role in making that happen. So thank you so much for all your support. Thank you so much for watching this, and I would love to hear your ideas for what we should be doing going forward. And with that, I hope you have a great weekend.